Columbus, the capital and largest city in the U.S. state of Ohio. Columbus lies in the middle of the state on the east bank of the Scioto River at roughly the halfway point between Ohio's other two largest cities, Cincinnati and Cleveland. Nicknames for the city include Seabus, Arch City, Cap City, and Discovery City. Some famous Columbus sites include gymnast Simone Biles, rapper and actor Bow Wow, formerly known as Lil Bow Wow, golfer and 18 major championship winner Jack Nicklaus, restaurateur and TV show host Guy Fieri, Goosebumps author R.L. Stine, How I Met Your Mother's Josh Radnor, actress Beverly D'Angelo, U.S. Air Force General and Commander of Strategic Air Command Curtis LeMay, boxing legend Buster Douglas, and although not born in Columbus, Samuel Prescott Bush, patriarch of the Bush political dynasty, spent most of his life in Columbus. Columbus is centered in Franklin County and extends into Delaware and Fairfield counties. Currently, Columbus is the 14th most populous city in the United States, second most populous in the Midwest after Chicago, and is the third most populous U.S. state capital after Phoenix and Austin. As of the 2020 census, the city shows a population of 905,748. The metro population comes in at 2,138,926, and the combined statistical area has a population of 2,606,479. Now, I have a few trivia questions for you. Question number 1. According to the 2020 census, what is the largest city in Ohio? This one's probably pretty easy since I just mentioned it, but if you guess Columbus, you're correct. Question number 2. According to the 2020 census, what is the largest metro area in the state of Ohio? The answer here is Cincinnati. Okay, so last question. According to the 2020 census, what is the largest combined statistical area in Ohio? Cleveland is the correct answer here. However, it's important to note that if population trends continue, Columbus will have the largest population in Ohio in all three categories in the near future. Columbus has a diverse economy focused around education, research, healthcare, insurance, energy, retail, and banking. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the city's GDP in 2019 was around $134 billion. Some of the city's most famous companies include Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company, American Electric Power, Bath & Body Works Inc., formerly known as L Brands, and former owner of Victoria's Secret and Pink, The Express, Lane Bryant, and Abercrombie & Fitch clothing brands, Huntington Bankshares, and Big Lots. The city is also a major player in the food industry, where it hosts the headquarters of Wendy's, White Castle, Bob Evans, and Donato's Pizza. Columbus is home to two public colleges, The Ohio State University and Columbus State Community College. Ohio State is one of the largest universities and largest campuses in the United States, with over 60,000 students living at the Columbus campus alone. The university has the sixth largest endowment of any public university in the United States. And near the campus of Ohio State University is the Battelle Memorial Institute, the largest independent nonprofit applied science and technology organization in the world. This international science and technology behemoth employs over 3,200 people and manages or co-manages several national laboratories, including the Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, and Brookhaven National Laboratories. Notable projects Battelle has helped develop include nuclear fuel rods, compact discs, correction fluid, which is probably most commonly known as whiteout, photovoltaic cells, fiber optics, and dry copying and the formation of the Xerox company. Columbus is home to two professional sports teams, Major League Soccer's Columbus Crew, one of the founding teams of Major League Soccer. The Crew have won the MLS Cup 3 times, including in 2023, and the National Hockey League's Blue Jackets, a recent addition to the NHL who won their first playoff series in 2019. And the city is served by 2 major interstate highways and 2 auxiliary interstate highways: I-70, I-71, I-270, and I-670. So how did Columbus become Ohio's fastest growing large city? And why is it the capital of Ohio? Let's take a dive into the city's history to find out. But before we dive into the history of Columbus, I'd like to take a quick moment to remind you that if you enjoy the content I create, please show your support by leaving a comment, liking the video, or subscribing to the channel. Now, on to the show. Columbus sits centrally in the state of Ohio at the confluence of the Scioto and Olentangy rivers. The area was once a vast woodland and is home to many streams and ravines. The city's topography is relatively flat due to the Wisconsin glaciation, which happened approximately 20,000 years ago. Between 1000 BC and 1700 AD, Central Ohio was home to numerous pre-Columbian cultures such as the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient peoples, who were collectively known as the Mound Builders due to the characteristic mound earthworks these people erected for burial and ceremonial purposes in and around their villages. Central Ohio is home to numerous mound archaeological sites, and you can still visit one of these mound sites within the city boundaries of Columbus today. The Shrum Mound has been preserved in the Campbell Memorial Park, and the mound's clay was used in the bricks of many of the city's initial brick buildings, including the Ohio Capitol State House. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the Ohio Country, or Ohio Territory, as the territory west of the Appalachian Mountains and south of Lake Erie was known to Europeans at the time, was controlled by the French colonial empire. The area was inhabited by numerous Native American tribes, including the Mingo, Shawnee, Wyandot, and Delaware. This resource-rich area was fought over between Native Americans, French fur trappers, and British settlers and soldiers. Numerous battles were waged during the French and Indian War over control of this strategically important land, but the British victory in the war saw the land ceded to the British Empire following the 1763 Treaty of Paris. In the 1700s, the state of Virginia had claims to the Ohio Territory going back to its colonial charter. However, following the American Revolution, Virginia ceded its claims to the Ohio Territory in order to assist with the ratification of the Articles of Confederation. In return for ceding its claims, Virginia was granted authority by the newly formed United States government to provide military land grants in the Ohio Territory, primarily around modern-day Columbus, to Virginian soldiers who had served in the Continental Army during the war in lieu of payment. As European settlers moved into Central Ohio, Native Americans resisted this colonial expansion, leading to many years of violence on the frontier. This violence culminated in the American victory at the Battle of Fallen Timbers in August of 1794, putting an end to major hostilities in the region. The subsequent 1795 Treaty of Greenville forced Native Americans and their British allies out of most of modern-day Ohio, opening the territory up to the American settlers. 2 years after the treaty was signed, a Virginian land surveyor named Lucas Sullivan established a permanent settlement on the west bank of the forks of the Scioto and Olentangy rivers. Sullivan, an admirer of American statesman and diplomat Benjamin Franklin, named the settlement Franklinton in his honor. Central Ohio was also used as compensation for another group of people. During the American Revolutionary War, there were groups of Canadians, Nova Scotians in particular, who sympathized with the American cause and rendered aid to the United States, some of them even joining the Continental Army to fight alongside Americans. Great Britain confiscated the lands of these Canadian sympathizers in retaliation. However, as a reward for their assistance, the United States government promised the Canadians some land in America. It took some time for the United States to follow through on its promise, but in 1798, Congress published advertisements inviting these Canadians with land claims to submit them. The vetting of these claims took years, but through acts passed in 1801 and 1812, land was given to these former Canadians in an area between modern-day Fifth Avenue in Columbus's north and Refugee Road in Columbus's south, an area comprising Columbus's downtown core today. And by the way, did you know that Columbus was not always the state capital of Ohio? Chillicothe had served as the state capital of Ohio twice, and Zanesville also temporarily served as the state capital. However, after Ohio achieved statehood in 1803, state leaders wanted to settle on a permanent location for its seat of government. Many locations were considered, but it was ultimately decided to build a new city in the state's center that had access to navigable rivers. In an effort to convince lawmakers that Franklinton served as an ideal location for the new capital, Franklin landowners donated two 10-acre plots of land on which to build the Ohio State House and Ohio Penitentiary. The land directly across the Scioto River from Franklinton was agreed upon as an ideal location to construct a capital, and local leaders named the new settlement in honor of European explorer Christopher Columbus. However, Columbus had some growing pains. From the city of Franklinton's founding up to the 1830s, this area in central Ohio struggled to grow. The region often flooded, and outbreaks of malaria and cholera were commonplace. Conflicting land claims of newly arriving settlers stymied progress, and the area was also not connected to any other large population centers by river, the primary means of travel at the time. But things began to improve in Columbus in 1831. During this time in American history, two major infrastructure projects were being built that would assist Columbus in its growth: the Ohio and Erie Canal and the National Road. The Ohio and Erie Canal passed near Columbus and connected the Ohio River to the city of Cleveland on Lake Erie. The National Road, also known as the Cumberland Road, was the first improved highway in the United States built by the federal government. This 620-mile road, built in an east-west direction, connected the Chesapeake Bay and the Potomac River in the east to the Ohio River and beyond in the west. The road was originally designed to go as far west as St. Louis on the Mississippi River, but funding for the project dried up and construction westward stopped at Valandia, Illinois, approximately 63 miles east of St. Louis. Construction of the road stopped in 1839, and ownership and maintenance of the road was transferred to the states which it ran through. The Ohio Penitentiary was completed in downtown Columbus in 1834. This prison operated all the way up until 1984 and sat in what is today's Arena District. Some of its notable inmates over the years include Confederate Army General John Hunt Morgan, mobster George Bugs Moran, and country music singer David Allan Coe. With its population surpassing 3,500 people, Columbus was officially chartered as a city on March 3, 1834, and John Brooks was elected the first city mayor. In 1837, Columbus annexed nearby Franklinton. It was during this time period the city received waves of European immigrants, which created two distinct ethnic enclaves in the city. Irish immigrants settled in the north-central part of the city, and German immigrants settled in the cheap land on the city's south side, in an area that would come to be known as Das Alte Südende, the Old South End. Along with being the state capital of such a populous state, the establishment of railroads in the city was one of the most significant factors of Columbus's growth. In the 1850s, Columbus became a railway town, and railroads were completed that linked Columbus to larger surrounding cities. The Columbus and Xenia Railroad was completed first, and the Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati Railroad was completed shortly thereafter. By 1875, 8 railroads served Columbus. Over the years, the city had 3 main Union train stations, the first operating from 1851 to 1871, the second from 1875 to 1897, and the third and final Union station serving from 1897 to 1976. Sadly, the third Union station, an architectural beauty, was demolished in 1976 to make way for the new Columbus Convention Center. However, during the station's demolition, citizens were able to salvage an arch from the building, and it stands today as the entry point to McPherson Commons in the Arena District. Construction of the Ohio State House began in 1839, but would not be completed until 1861. The construction was delayed several times due to political infighting, indecisiveness on selecting a final design, and a cholera outbreak. It wasn't until a fire destroyed the building the legislature was temporarily using while awaiting construction of the new Capitol building that work sped up on the project. The Ohio General Assembly held its first session in the new building in 1857, several years before the rotunda and surrounding Capitol Square were finished in 1861. Columbus was a major center of operations for the Union Army in the American Civil War, which the NHL's Columbus Blue Jackets team name pays homage to. Columbus was home to 2 major Union military bases, Camp Thomas in North Columbus and Camp Chase in West Columbus. Camp Thomas served as the training facility and headquarters of the 18th U.S. Infantry. The 18th Infantry served in the Western Theater of the Civil War, seeing action at famous battles such as Perryville, Chattanooga, Chickamauga, the second deadliest battle of the Civil War, and Sherman's famous March on Atlanta. And Camp Chase served as a large military training camp and prisoner of war camp during the war. As many as 150,000 Union soldiers and over 25,000 Confederate prisoners passed through its gates from 1861 to 1865. Today, more than 2,200 Confederates who died at the prisoner of war camp are buried in the Camp Chase Cemetery. First opening as the Ohio Agricultural and Mechanical College, Ohio State University was founded in 1870 in response to the Morrill Land Grant Acts of 1862. The university hosted its first class of 24 students on September 17, 1873. Today, Ohio State is one of the largest universities in the United States with an endowment of over $7.4 billion. The university plays a large part in the economy of Columbus, as the school is one of the largest research centers in the United States, and the school's D1 sports teams, including its well-known and successful football team, attract hundreds of thousands of fans to the area. And the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center provides health care to thousands of patients annually. In the latter part of the 19th century, Columbus experienced an industrial boom. The city became known as the buggy capital of the world due to the 24 buggy factories located in the area. Buggy in this sense meaning a lightweight automobile with sparse bodywork. Think of a dune buggy or horseless carriage here. The most famous of these buggy companies, the Columbus Buggy Company, was founded in 1875 and at its height employed over 1,200 people and produced over 100 buggies every day, selling them all over the United States. Two notable employees of the Columbus Buggy Company include aerial fighter ace and Medal of Honor recipient Eddie Rickenbacker, America's most decorated flying ace of World War I, and Harvey S. Firestone, cousin of Columbus Buggy Company founder C.D. Firestone. Seeing the potential of providing rubber tires for buggies and automobiles while working at the Columbus Buggy Company, Harvey Firestone would go on to create Firestone Tire and Rubber Company in Akron, Ohio, one of the largest suppliers of automotive tires in North America. Beginning as an iron foundry that made iron farming tools, Buckeyes Steel Castings was founded in 1881. The company found early success in manufacturing iron train car couplings, but later switched to manufacturing steel car couplings due to steel's inherent qualities that are superior to iron and due to cutting-edge manufacturing processes at the time that made quality steel easier to produce. In 1902, the company moved to the Parsons Avenue location, where the facility covered an area of over 90 acres and was the largest single-site steel foundry in North America. A year before, in 1901, Buckeye Steel Castings hired Samuel Prescott Bush, patriarch of the Bush political dynasty and grandfather of George H.W. Bush and great-grandfather of George W. Bush. Samuel P. Bush worked his way up from apprentice mechanic to superintendent in a matter of years, and in 1908 became the company's president. And it was during this time that Samuel P. Bush rose to become a famous industrialist, which would strengthen his political influence in Washington, D.C. Bush was an important figure in the Columbus area, founding the Columbus Academy and the Scioto Country Club. His grave can be visited today at the Green Lawn Cemetery on the city's west side. The 1890s were a busy time for labor movements across the United States, but especially in Columbus. In 1886, the city hosted the founding convention of the American Federation of Labor and elected Samuel Gompers its first president. The union still exists today as the AFL-CIO and is the largest workers' union group in the United States. And only a few years after the founding of the AFL, the United Mine Workers of America was founded in Columbus City Hall in 1890. These unions served as models for future unions and worked hard to gain workers' rights and improve worker safety. At the turn of the 20th century, Columbus would earn its nickname of Arch City due to the numerous wooden arches that lined High Street at the time, in the Short North District. These arches, besides being aesthetically pleasing, were illuminated for pedestrians to walk the streets at night and later became a means of electrical power for Columbus streetcars. The city tore down the arches in 1914, but reconstructed them in 2002 out of metal to pay homage to this city's unique feature. In March of 1913, the Great Flood ravaged central Ohio and devastated Franklinton in particular. The flood left over 90 people dead and thousands of people homeless. As a result, the city, at the guidance of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, widened the Scioto River in downtown Columbus, built a flood wall along its banks, and constructed sturdier bridges with higher deck heights. Following the Entente victory in World War I, Columbus experienced an era of prosperity, and a construction boom ensued. Many of Columbus's iconic buildings were built during this time, including the Ohio Theater, the American Insurance Union Citadel, and an enormous new stadium for Ohio State football. The city also played an important and foundational role in the National Football League. As many people know, the Great Lakes region, particularly Ohio, is often considered the cradle of American football. Joseph Carr, a Columbusite, founded and managed many early professional sports teams in the city, including the Columbus Panhandles, a football team made up of local railroad employees and one of the founding teams of the American Professional Football Conference, which would later become the NFL. Although the American Professional Football Conference was originally founded in Canton, Ohio in 1920, the league moved its headquarters to Columbus in 1922 after naming Joseph Carr its league president. Carr served as league president from 1921 to 1939, and Columbus served as league headquarters from 1922 to 1941, after which the league decided to move its operations to Chicago. Columbus weathered the Great Depression better than most U.S. cities during the 1930s and experienced an economic boom during and after the Second World War. It was during this period that Columbus experienced another large wave of migrants, but this time from within the United States. Families from the poorer areas of Appalachia poured into Columbus searching for work in the city's many factories, and the area experienced a large population surge. With the influx of so many people, Central Ohio expanded rapidly by building suburban housing and highways to connect the suburbs to downtown Columbus. Jim Rhodes, who served as mayor of Columbus from 1944 to 1952 before becoming governor of Ohio, established the city's first income tax and established his so-called water gun policy. Rhodes's water gun policy was a reaction to the mayor and council's fear of losing a considerable amount of local tax base to the new subdivisions being built just outside the city. Mayor Rhodes made it clear that if new developments wanted access to municipal water lines, they would have to submit to being annexed by the city of Columbus. This is why today, Columbus is one of the largest cities in the United States by land area. And it was in 1963 that Columbusite and Ohio State University graduate Les Wexner began his foray into the clothing industry. After working in his parents' clothing store in Columbus while they were on vacation, Wexner identified the store's most and least profitable items and brought them to his father's attention so that his father could market the store's most profitable items and discard the items that weren't selling. After his father showed little interest in his ideas, Wexner borrowed $5,000 from his aunt and $5,000 from a local bank to open his first store, The Limited, at the Kingsdale Shopping Center in Upper Arlington in northwest Columbus. The store focused on clothing for young women rather than being a general merchandise store for everyone. Things took off from there, and by 1976, Wexner opened his 100th store. In 1982, Wexner bought Victoria's Secret, the largest lingerie retailer in the United States, which by 1992 became worth over $1 billion. Today, Bath & Body Works Inc., the successor to the Limited and L brands, employs over 57,000 people and reported $7.4 billion in revenue in 2023. In the 1970s, Columbus experienced another population and construction boom. Most of the city's tallest buildings were built during this time period, including the Rhodes State Office Tower, the PNC Bank Building, and Nationwide Plaza. And this building boom continued into the 80s and 90s, with the construction of the Greater Columbus Convention Center and the completion of the William Green Building, the Huntington Center, and the Vern Rife State Office Tower. At the turn of the 21st century, Columbus began to look at remodeling its downtown core. Through the advocacy of Mayor Michael B. Coleman, Columbus invested in cleaning up and redesigning its riverfront with the Scioto Mile, a greenway trail connecting 9 city parks along both banks of the river as it winds through downtown. For a large part of the city's history, the Scioto was lined with houses and factories. The river was used primarily for industrial purposes and was polluted by garbage, sewage, and manufacturing waste. The river itself was muddy and stagnant due to the building of a low-head dam in 1918, which was meant to control flooding at the time. When this dam was removed due to the Scioto Mile development, it made the river more narrow, restored the river's natural flow, and opened up 33 acres of land along its shore. The mile, as it is also known, was initially designed as a public green space to connect the Bicentennial Park in the south to the Battelle Riverfront Park in the north. but would be improved upon and expanded multiple times. Streets along the mile were redesigned and gardens and fountains were installed throughout. Today, the mile, in connection with the city's trail network, provides tree-lined bike and pedestrian paths that connect the 9 city parks to the Arena District, Ohio State University, the Scioto Peninsula, and the downtown core. In my opinion, Columbus's unique history is the reason for its success, for a couple of reasons. First, the city was a planned city from its inception, so, for the most part, thoughtful planning went into the design of the city's streets and infrastructure. Columbus avoided many mistakes that cities which expanded naturally find it difficult to undo decades later. And second, in the beginning, the city had a very slow start because it was not connected to any other cities by rivers. Because of this slow early growth, which happens to coincide with the heyday of American industrial expansion, Columbus had to develop a diversified economy and avoided being reliant on industry in its formative years, and today does not suffer from many of the issues other Rust Belt cities in the area suffer from, namely deindustrialization, job loss, and large areas of urban blight. Columbus's future looks very promising. Something I found interesting in researching this video is that Columbus has never experienced a population loss. It has experienced double-digit growth in every decade of the U.S. Census since 1820, except for the decades of 1860, 1940, and 1980. And in those decades, the city experienced high single-digit growth. I would not be surprised if Columbus moved into the top 20 largest cities in the United States within the next couple of decades. It has all the ingredients for continued city growth in the modern era. It's a state capital, which provides thousands of permanent jobs. It has a major research university, which creates jobs. It has a diverse economy. It still has a relatively low cost of living, and housing is still relatively affordable compared to other cities of similar size. There are no natural barriers to its outward growth, such as the ocean or mountains. And the city has a high quality of life, access to great healthcare, and many attractions to offer. I think Columbus's largest challenge ahead as a city is growing responsibly, and growing in a way that preserves its history and character for future generations to enjoy.